Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel General Hospital today. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The reading of Monica Quartermain's will was a seismic event that sent shockwaves through Port Charles, leaving the residents of the town, and particularly the halls of General Hospital, in a state of stunned disbelief. The Quartermain mansion, long a crucible for drama, betrayal and unexpected alliances, had seen its fair share of jaw-dropping moments, but this one eclipsed them all. Monica, the matriarch who had weathered decades of turmoil with steely resolve, had crafted a final testament that no one could have anticipated. Her decisions, revealed in the somber atmosphere of the attorney's office, were a masterstroke of calculated surprises, forcing everyone to confront their pasts, their loyalties, and the secrets they thought were buried forever. Perhaps the most shocking revelation was reserved for the end. Monica had set aside a significant portion of her personal fortune to establish a foundation for medical research, to be overseen by General Hospital itself. But the kicker was the appointment of its director, Robin Scorpio Drake, who had been presumed dead for years before her dramatic return. Robin, who was not present at the reading, was named in absentia, and the room fell silent as the implications sank in. Monica had not only brought Robin back into the fold, but had entrusted her with a legacy that would shape the future of the hospital. Whispers filled the room. Some wondered if Robin even knew, while others speculated about the message Monica was sending by choosing someone who had been absent for so long. As the lawyer concluded, the room exploded into a cacophony of arguments, accusations, and stunned silences. Tracy stormed out, vowing to contest the will. Ned sat motionless, grappling with the weight of his new responsibility. Jason slipped out quietly, avoiding the press of reporters waiting outside. Sam, still processing the trust fund clause, exchanged a tense glance with Carly, who offered a small nod of solidarity. The Quartermain family, already fractured, seemed on the brink of imploding entirely. In the days that followed, the fallout from Monica's will rippled through Port Charles. Tracy wasted no time assembling a legal team, claiming Monica must have been coerced or mentally unfit when she drafted the document. Her accusations targeted Jason, whom she believed had manipulated his mother for his own gain. Jason, true to form, remained silent, but those close to him noticed a heaviness in his demeanor, as if the weight of Monica's trust was more burden than blessing. Ned, meanwhile, began navigating the logistics of the mansion's new status, fielding calls from distant Quartermain cousins who suddenly wanted to reconnect, now that they had a legal claim to the property. Sam's reaction was more introspective. She spent hours poring over the legal documents, trying to understand Monica's intentions. The trust fund for her children was generous, but the restrictions stung. She confided in Alexis, her mother, that she felt judged, as if Monica believed she couldn't be trusted with her own children's future. Alexis, ever the lawyer, urged Sam to focus on the positive. Her children were secure. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling that Monica's decision was a commentary on her past mistakes. Carly, on the other hand, found herself unexpectedly emotional as she read through Monica's letters. Each one was a snapshot of their tumultuous history. Moments of rivalry, moments of understanding, and moments of unexpected kindness. Carly began to see Monica not just as a formidable opponent, but as a woman who had navigated her own share of pain and loss. She shared the letters with Jocelyn, her daughter, who was struck by the depth of Monica's insight. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for Carly, and it shifted how she viewed her place in Port Charles. At General Hospital, the news of the Medical Research Foundation sparked a mix of excitement and apprehension. The hospital had been struggling financially, and Monica's bequest was a lifeline. But Robin's appointment as director raised questions. Would she return to Port Charles to take up the role? And if she did, how would her presence affect the delicate balance of relationships among the staff? Patrick Drake, Robin's ex-husband, was particularly shaken. He hadn't spoken to Robin in months, and the idea of her returning to lead a project so closely tied to Monica's legacy stirred up old feelings he thought he'd buried. As the weeks passed, Monica's will became the talk of the town, dissected in coffee shops, hospital break rooms, and the pages of the Port Charles press. Reporters dug into every detail, speculating about Monica's motivations and the impact on the Quartermain dynasty. Some saw her decisions as a final act of control, a way to shape the family's future from beyond the grave. Others viewed it as a love letter to Port Charles, a testament to her belief in redemption, second chances, and the power of legacy. The Quartermaines, for their part, were forced to confront uncomfortable truths. Tracy's attempts to contest the will hit roadblocks when it was revealed that Monica had consulted multiple lawyers to ensure its airtight legality. Ned began to see the mansion not just as a burden but as an opportunity to redefine what family meant. Jason, despite his reluctance, found himself drawn into ELQ's affairs, his mother's faith in him a constant reminder of the responsibility he could no longer ignore. And Sam, slowly coming to terms with Monica's decision, began to focus on her children's future, determined to prove her worth as a mother. Monica's will, in the end, was more than a legal document. It was a mirror held up to Port Charles, reflecting the complexities of love, loyalty, and betrayal. It forced everyone to question their assumptions, their grudges, and their dreams. And as the town grappled with the aftermath, one thing was clear. Monica Quartermaine's legacy would endure, not just in the wealth she left behind, but in the lives she touched and the truth she forced into the light. The ripples of that day in the attorney's office would continue to shape Port Charles for years to come. Relationships were tested, alliances formed and broken, and the very fabric of the Quartermaine family was rewoven. Monica, even in death, remained a force to be reckoned with. A woman who, with her final act, reminded everyone that she had always been one step ahead. The most shocking revelation, however, came near the end of the reading. Monica had left a considerable portion of her wealth to someone completely unexpected, Elizabeth Weber. The room went silent as her name was spoken. Elizabeth had been Monica's daughter-in-law once, and through all of Jason's ups and downs, she had remained a fixture in the family's orbit. Still, no one anticipated that Monica would leave her anything substantial. Yet Monica's will made it clear. She wanted Elizabeth to have financial security, not just for herself but for her children, who carried Quartermaine blood through Jake. Elizabeth's hand flew to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes, overcome by the gesture. Others, however, were less moved. Tracy muttered under her breath, Michael shot a glance at Ned, and Brooklyn looked like she was trying to process the implications. Clearly, Monica's will had not just stirred emotion, it had drawn new battle lines. The fallout from the will reading lingered in the air like a storm that refused to break. That night, the Quartermaine mansion was unusually quiet, but the silence was deceptive. Behind closed doors, whispered conversations and heated arguments carried on, each family member retreating to their corners to process what had just happened. For a family so accustomed to conflict, Monica's final act had struck deeper than usual, because it was personal. These were not just financial decisions, they were declarations of love, judgment, and trust, and everyone left the room feeling either validated or betrayed. Ned paced back and forth in his study, Olivia watching him with concern. He had tried to keep his emotions in check during the will reading, but once he was behind closed doors, his frustration poured out. She gave Michael the mansion, he said, his voice rising. Michael, of all people. He spends more time with Sonny and Carly than he does here, and she left him a claim on our home. Olivia tried to calm him, pointing out that Monica had always loved Michael, and had wanted to ensure he stayed connected to his Quartermaine roots. But Ned wasn't interested in reason. To him, it was an insult to his years of dedication to ELQ and the family legacy. Olivia knew there was no convincing him otherwise, at least not tonight. Tracy, meanwhile, was already planning her next move. Sitting alone with a glass of scotch, she seethed over what she considered Monica's betrayal. In her mind, Monica had been swayed by emotion, manipulated by Drew, Elizabeth, and anyone else who had whispered in her ear in her final days. Tracy refused to accept that her share was so small compared to others. I'll contest it, she muttered to herself, her eyes narrowing. There's no way she was thinking clearly. She had contested wills before and had the resources to hire the best lawyers money could buy. But deep down she also knew that Monica had always been sharp, even in her later years. Contesting the will wouldn't be easy, and the family might see it as yet another greedy power grab. Still, Tracy had never been one to let public opinion stop her. Brooklyn sat in her room with the documents about the charitable foundation spread out in front of her. She wanted to be proud, to feel honored that Monica had trusted her with something so important. but she couldn't help feeling overwhelmed. Running a foundation was not like writing a song or managing a band. It required focus, discipline, and a long-term commitment. She wondered if Monica had truly believed in her, or if this was Monica's way of testing her maturity. "I can do this," Brooklyn whispered, as if saying the words would make them true. But the weight of the responsibility was heavy, and she knew the rest of the family would be watching, waiting for her to fail. Michael returned to the Corinthos compound, where Willow was waiting for him. He told her everything, still stunned that Monica had left him part of the mansion. Willow was supportive, insisting that Monica had only done what she thought was right. "She wanted you to always have a place with the Quartermaines," Willow said softly. "She didn't want you caught between families anymore." Michael nodded, but he wasn't sure. Owning part of the Quartermaine mansion meant stepping directly into the family's battles, and the last thing he wanted was more conflict. Yet he couldn't deny that it felt good to know Monica had thought of him as truly part of her world. It was both a gift and a burden, and he wasn't sure which side would outweigh the other. Drew took a long walk by the harbor after the will reading, the cool night air clearing his head. He had never expected Monica to leave him so much. While Jason had always been the one deeply intertwined with the Quartermaine legacy, Drew had often felt like an outsider. Monica's gesture made him feel like she truly saw him, not as Jason's twin but as his own man, someone worthy of carrying on her name. But Drew also knew that others would see it differently. To some, it would look like favoritism or manipulation. He could already hear Tracy's accusations, the insinuations that he must have talked Monica into it. The thought of a family war breaking out over her final wishes left him uneasy. He wanted to honor her memory, not see it torn apart by greed and resentment. Elizabeth spent the evening in tears, her boys comforting her as best they could. She had never asked Monica for anything, and the thought that Monica had left her and her children such a generous gift was overwhelming. She felt guilt mixing with gratitude, wondering if she deserved it. "She wanted Jake taken care of," Elizabeth said aloud, more to herself than to her sons. "She wanted to make sure we were secure. But she also knew that others would see it as favoritism, and she dreaded the backlash." The Quartermaines were never subtle about their anger, and Elizabeth wasn't sure she had the strength to withstand their accusations. Still, she was determined to honor Monica's memory by using the inheritance wisely, for her children and for herself. As the days passed, the ripples of Monica's will spread through Port Charles. Whispers filled the hospital halls, conversations sparked at Kelly's, and speculation dominated discussions at the Metro Court. Everyone had an opinion about Monica's choices. Some saw her decisions as bold and fair, others as misguided and divisive. But one thing was clear. Her will had reignited the Quartermaine drama in a way that even death couldn't extinguish. Tracy wasted no time in reaching out to her lawyers, preparing her case to contest the will. She cited Monica's emotional state in her final days, claiming she had been too frail to make such sweeping decisions. But others, including Monica's longtime colleagues at General Hospital, quickly pushed back, insisting that Monica had been sharp until the very end. Tracy's determination to overturn the will began to alienate even those closest to her, including Ned, who found himself torn between loyalty to his aunt and frustration with her endless scheming. Olivia begged him to stay out of it, warning that siding with Tracy would only deepen the rift in the family, but Ned's pride kept him conflicted. Meanwhile, Drew found himself caught in the middle of a storm he hadn't asked for. ELQ's board was suddenly buzzing with speculation about whether Drew's newfound inheritance would give him more influence in the company. Though Monica's will hadn't directly addressed ELQ shares, the financial security she provided him made others suspicious. Michael, already dealing with his new claim to the mansion, now felt that his position within the family business was being threatened. For the first time in years, the cousins found themselves on opposite sides, each defending their interpretation of Monica's intentions. Their once strong alliance began to show cracks, much to the delight of those who thrived on Quartermaine infighting. Brooke Lynn tried to focus on her new role with the foundation, but she quickly realized it wasn't going to be easy. The press wanted statements, donors wanted meetings, and the family wanted reassurance that she wouldn't embarrass them. She turned to Chase for support, and though he offered encouragement, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was in over her head. Still, Brooke Lynn knew she had something to prove, not just to the family but to herself. If she failed, Tracy would use it as proof that Monica had made a mistake, and Brooklyn refused to give her that satisfaction. Elizabeth, too, faced scrutiny. At Kelly's, she overheard whispers about her windfall, with some suggesting she didn't deserve it, that Monica had only done it out of guilt or misplaced loyalty. She kept her head high, focusing on her children, but inside she felt the sting of judgment. Still, she held on to Monica's words in the will, reminding herself that Monica had trusted her, and that trust meant more than the opinions of others. She vowed to honor Monica's memory by living with the grace and strength the Quartermaine matriarch had always admired in her. The more time passed, the clearer it became. Monica's will was not just a list of bequests. It was a test, a final challenge to her family and those she loved, forcing them to confront their loyalties, their insecurities, and their ambitions. Some would rise to the occasion, others would crumble, and still others would fight tooth and nail to bend her words to their advantage. Port Charles had seen its fair share of drama, but the saga of Monica Quartermaine's will was shaping up to be one of the most explosive chapters yet. The tension surrounding Monica's will only grew in the following weeks, reaching a boiling point as Tracy's legal maneuvers became public knowledge. The Quartermaine mansion once again became the center of chaos, with family members coming and going at all hours, each with their own agenda. The grand old house had survived countless arguments over the years, but the bitterness stirred up by Monica's final wishes made it feel more divided than ever. What she had hoped would unite her family was instead pushing them further apart. Tracy was relentless. She summoned the family lawyer to the mansion, demanding a full review of the will's validity. She claimed that Monica had been under undue influence when making her decisions, citing Drew and Elizabeth as the prime suspects. "It's obvious," Tracy said with her usual sharpness. "She was manipulated. Why else would she leave such a ridiculous fortune to people who weren't even true Quartermaines by blood?" Her words cut deeply, particularly when Elizabeth happened to overhear one of her tirades. Elizabeth had grown used to being judged by Tracy, but hearing Monica's gift dismissed as manipulation stung more than she wanted to admit. Ned found himself caught in the middle of the brewing storm. On one hand, he understood Tracy's frustration. He too felt unsettled about Monica's decision to leave Michael a portion of the mansion. On the other hand, he knew that contesting the will would rip the family apart. Olivia urged him to distance himself from Tracy's crusade, reminding him that Monica had trusted them to carry on the Quartermaine legacy, not destroy it in endless court battles. "She wanted unity, Ned," Olivia said softly one night. "If you let Tracy drag you into this, you'll be undoing everything Monica stood for." But Ned's pride kept him conflicted. He hated the idea of Michael having such control, and he despised that Drew suddenly seemed more important in the family hierarchy. Michael, meanwhile, began to feel the weight of his inheritance more than ever. The Quartermaine mansion had always been chaotic, but knowing he now had a legal claim to it only made things worse. Every visit felt like a test, every interaction tinged with suspicion. Brooklyn tried to reassure him that Monica had only wanted to give him stability, but Michael could sense the resentment in Ned's glare, the bitterness in Tracy's remarks, and the subtle tension in Drew's presence. Willow reminded him that Monica had loved him unconditionally, and her decision was simply an extension of that love. But Michael couldn't shake the feeling that Monica had unintentionally set him up for endless battles. Drew tried to remain above the fray, but his new inheritance quickly became a source of speculation within ELQ. Shareholders whispered about whether Drew's financial security would give him more leverage to expand his influence. Valentine Cassadine, ever the opportunist, watched from the sidelines with a smile, knowing that Quartermaine infighting only benefited him. The more Michael and Drew clashed, the weaker their collective hold on ELQ became. Drew hated playing into Valentine's hands, but he couldn't ignore the tension building between himself and Michael. Their conversations, once supportive and brotherly, now carried an edge of suspicion, as if each were trying to decode the other's true intentions. Brooklyn poured herself into her new role overseeing Monica's foundation, determined not to let her grandmother down. She attended meetings, coordinated with hospital staff, and started laying the groundwork for a series of community initiatives. But for every step forward she faced criticism. Tracy scoffed at her efforts, dismissing them as child's play. Ned questioned whether she was neglecting her music career. Even Olivia, supportive as she was, Worried that Brooklyn was overwhelming herself, Chase remained her steady anchor, reminding her that Monica had believed in her for a reason. Still, the pressure mounted, and Brooklyn knew that if she failed, it would become ammunition for those who doubted Monica's judgment. Elizabeth found herself in an even more precarious position. While she tried to focus on her family and her work at the hospital, the whispers around town followed her everywhere. Some saw Monica's gift as a touching gesture, recognition of the bond Elizabeth had shared with her through Jason and Jake. Others, however, saw it as proof of manipulation. Tracy led that charge, openly questioning Elizabeth's motives and hinting that she had somehow convinced Monica to leave her the money. Elizabeth tried to ignore the accusations, but the weight of public opinion was heavy. At night, when the house was quiet, she found herself staring at Monica's letter, the one that explained her reasoning. In it, Monica had written that she admired Elizabeth's strength, her dedication as a mother, and her resilience through every storm. Those words gave Elizabeth comfort, even as the world seemed to doubt her. The cracks in the family grew wider when Tracy escalated her fight. She called a family meeting, gathering everyone at the mansion to lay out her intentions. "This cannot stand," she announced, her voice cold and commanding. Monica was not of sound mind. She was manipulated by people who don't belong in this family. "I intend to prove it in court."